So it is my pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Kevin Owocki. Kevin is a well-known community organizer in the Boulder tech community, making major contributions to projects such as Boulder Startup Week, Ignite Boulder, Boulder Blockchain Meetup, and others. Kevin has 10 years of engineering leadership experience in startups. A few years back, he was named one of the top entrepreneurs under 30 by both Impact 100 and the Inc. magazine. His work's been featured in TechCrunch, CNN, New York Times, Wired, Forbes, just to name a few. He's the founder of a company called Gitcoin, a novel network using a cryptocurrency called Ethereum in the blockchain ecosystem. Now, if you're not sure what I just said, you're not alone. And you're in luck, because Kevin is here to help us start to grok this rather arcane new world, a world in which the disruptive new internet financial technologies may do to financial services industry what the music sharing and streaming did to the record industry and Amazon and the internet have done to publishing. Please give a warm Rotary welcome to Kevin Owocki.
Hello. Boy, Gary, thank you for the warm welcome and for the introduction. But you didn't tell me I was going to follow the guy who just gave $20,000 to this club. So, regardless, thanks for having me. I'm very happy to be here presenting blockchain demystified to the Boulder Rotary Club. So I guess I would, in introducing myself, just say that there's three main influences in my life and my career in the Boulder community. The first is that I have a bachelor's degree in computer science from the University of Delaware in 2006. And I'm going to try to not use any of the vocabulary that I learned in my degree when I describe blockchain here. But the technology is pretty technical and pretty early these days. So if I say something that is a vocabulary term that you don't understand, I'm saving about 15 minutes for Q&A, and we can get into it then. The other main influence in my life is startups. I've been in the Boulder technology scene for about 10 years. I'm originally from the East Coast, but there's this program called Techstars, which is run by David Cohen and Brad Feld and Jared Polis, who's now running for governor. That's basically takes three guys with a dream in a garage that are trying to build a startup and gives you a little bit of seed capital and puts you in front of investors. And I wouldn't be out in Colorado if it weren't for the people who came before me and were investing in Colorado out here. And then the third is my work in the Boulder community, which Gary briefly alluded to, organizing the Boulder Blockchain Meetup, which is every other week in Boulder downtown and is free to come to. And you are all welcome if you want to learn more about blockchain after my presentation to come to that. And also my volunteer work with Boulder Startup Week. I think that there's something really special about the Colorado community in that the community here has this give first ethos, and just the community is more than the sum of its parts out here. And I think that's really, really special. So my agenda for the presentation today is to talk about what is blockchain and why does it matter, and then talk about some of the blockchains that are out there and what they're trying to do. So I just gave you guys an intro to me. I'd love to get a little bit of a feel for the audience. How many people have a computer at home? Okay, just making sure. How many people have a smartphone? Okay. How many people have used the internet at least 3 times this week? Okay. How many people have written a computer program before? Okay. How many people have invested in the stock market? Okay, yeah, that was a gimme. How many people have invested in Bitcoin or a blockchain before? Okay, a few hands went up. Got it. Well, the first thing I want to start by saying is that I'm not here to talk about the price, and I'm not here to talk about investing in Bitcoin or in the blockchain. My goal for this presentation is to take you behind the price to some of the fundamental things that I see happening in the technology sector and what I think blockchain could become and why I think it's important to the world. And I think that conversation about the price is good small talk, and I think that it's a good thing for pulling people into the ecosystem. But I also think that it doesn't get very far below surface level. And so my goal today is to get a little bit below surface level with y'all and help you grok this trend. The one thing that I will say while I do have the price slide up is that this is a very early technology. And because of that, it's very, very volatile. If you do decide to invest in cryptocurrencies, then or to do further research on them, then I advise you not to invest more than you can afford to lose, and to do so, to tread very, very lightly. I am a software engineer. I am not a financial advisor, but that's just kind of like the entry-level advice that's given to anyone who's responsibly showing you this ecosystem. So I want to start my presentation about blockchain by framing it as potentially a new revolution in the internet. And in order to do that, I'd like to bring up the example of there's a show on AMC called *Halt and Catch Fire*. Has anyone in the audience seen that show? Okay, so I'll give you like a 10-second overview. It's about these entrepreneurs in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. And it basically is a show that follows them through the IBM PC clone wars, through AOL and Prodigy, the like closed networks of the internet of the 80s and 90s, and then through the birth of the web as we know it today. And there's this scene in the, I think it's like season 3, in which these entrepreneurs are sitting around and they're saying to each other, what will the web become? And if you think about the 1990s, particularly the early 1990s, the web was just, it was just used by research scientists, and you're probably only hooked up to the web if you're an academic at one of the major universities in the United States. And so I think that what's interesting about this point in time for me, especially when it comes to talking about the blockchain, is that it's obvious in hindsight that the internet was going to become Facebook and Google and Yahoo and email and Twitter. But when you're in the early 90s and you're looking forward, all of that stuff just seems so opaque, and it's not really clear what it's going to become, because it's just a network of computers that can talk to each other. What's going to be built on top of that? And I think that's pretty similar to where we are in 2018 with blockchain. And then the other piece of framing that I like to give when I'm giving like a blockchain 101 presentation is that so there's this fable about three blind monks who are trying to grok to conceptualize what an elephant is only by touching it. So they're blind and they can't see the whole elephant. And so one of the men is feeling the hoof the leg, and he says, "This is a tree." And another one of them is feeling the tusk, and he says, "Oh, this is something sharp." And in some versions of this fable, the blind men come to blows and they argue with each other because they can't decide, they can't come to agree on what it is that they're trying to conceptualize. And I feel like this all the time when I'm talking to people about blockchain and the new internet, because there's just so many dimensions to understanding it that it's just very hard to conceptualize what the whole elephant is. My goal for today, I only have a half hour, is to help you conceptualize a little bit more what the elephant is and to set you on a journey in which you could begin to understand it. So with that framing aside, my view is that blockchain is the internet of money. And what I mean by that is that if you look at the internet from a software engineer's angle, basically what it is the ability to take information and transmit it across a computer network without a centralized intermediary. the internet is just a decentralized network of servers that we all happen to be connected to, and then there's applications that are built on top of it, like websites and email and Facebook and stuff like that. And the analogy is that the internet allows us to transmit information over a computer network. What blockchain allows us to do is to transmit value or scarcity across a computer network without an intermediary. And so if you think about how much the internet has changed the world and some of the fundamental politicians and technologies and changes to our world that have come out of the internet, and you project that forward to the blockchain, or I'm sorry, to the internet of value, then what kind of companies and what kind of social revolutions are going to come out of the ability to transmit value over a computer network? And so I think that it's possible that blockchain will just be a flop, but I also think it's possible that blockchain could be as big as the internet itself, because information is a pillar of a 21st century society, but so is value and so is money. So that's why I think that you should care about blockchain. Let's talk a little bit about what blockchain actually is. And this is by far the most technical slide that I've got in my deck. But basically, a blockchain is just a chain of blocks. And inside of each of those blocks, there's a transaction that denotes an exchange of value between one party to another. And about every 10 minutes on the Bitcoin blockchain, every 10 seconds on the Ethereum blockchain, there's a new block that is minted that has new transactions and adds them to the chain. And through this process of minting new blocks, we start to have a ledger. So anyone who's worked in finance or has balanced a checkbook or pretty much has lived in modern society, I think, has used a ledger before. It's just basically a way of keeping track of who in a group of people or organizations owes who else money. And if you look at the latest block in that blockchain, then that's what, then you're basically looking at the ledger of balances of who owes who what money. But so ledgers have been around for centuries and there's nothing new about them. But the primary innovation of the blockchain is that the ledgers are spread in a distributed manner across the internet. So the idea here is that because the ledger is decentralized or distributed, then it's completely tamper-proof. And that's important for a couple reasons. It means that if you're in an area of the world where you've got a corrupt government that's stealing its citizens' value, or if you're in an area even of the states that has where civil asset forfeiture is a thing, then basically it's a place to put your money that can't be affected by any centralized party really for any justification. And that's sort of like the fundamental breakthrough of decentralized money and of the blockchain. So that's the blockchain. That's the data structure that sort of underlies this phenomenon. And the most famous blockchain is called Bitcoin. And Bitcoin was created in 2008 after the financial crisis. It's crazy that was 10 years ago. But yeah, so I mean, you think about the political environment after the financial crisis. The Bitcoin white paper was released in late 2008, early 2009, and one of the fundamental value propositions of Bitcoin for this group of computer scientists that released it was that this was a time when the Fed and Congress was approving bailouts and the Fed was printing new money, doing quantitative easing in order to rescue the economy. And you know, it's besides, I think that the people who introduced Bitcoin to the world kind of felt like, well, people who already have money shouldn't be diluted by the printing of new money, and that was sort of one of the motivations of the release of the Bitcoin blockchain. And at the time, the Bitcoin, 1 unit of Bitcoin was worth about 1 cent. Since then, it's gone through several boom and bust cycles, several times in which it's gone 10x and then has died, and it's now at about $7,000. So it's gone from the fringes of the cyberpunk movement to being increasingly accepted by traditional finance and seen as sort of a hedge against the, well, I'm not a finance guy, but I know that some people invest in it as a hedge against national economies, sort of similar to how you would invest in a non-state asset like gold. So that's Bitcoin. There's actually a whole ecosystem of cryptocurrencies that have come up and are swimming in the wake of Bitcoin. And I want to talk about a few of those, and then we can break for about 10 minutes of Q&A. So the first one that I want to talk about is Zcash. And Zcash, I'm actually proud to say the founder of Zcash is based out of Boulder, Colorado. His name is Zuko Wilcox. And Zcash stands for Zero Knowledge Cash. And basically what they're aiming to do is have completely private, provably private, like provably from a mathematical standpoint, private transactions on a blockchain. So they're trying to take the anonymity associated with cash, with handing someone a $5 bill, and bring that into this new generation of financial transactions. And sort of their view is that privacy is a human right, and that anyone should be able to transact anonymously and purchase goods or service digitally in a private way, just like they can with cash. The next one that I want to talk about is Ripple. So I should say there's a ranking of cryptocurrencies by market cap, and Zcash I think is like number 20 on the coin market cap list. Ripple is number 3 or number 4 right now. And Ripple, what it basically intends to do is replace the system of interbank transfers. And again, I'm not a finance guy, but I know that there's this thing called ACH, and anytime you want to transfer money from one bank to another, you put your ACH routing number and your ACH account number into the system. And basically, there's this whole legacy network that was built in the middle of the 20th century that allows for interbank transfers, and they basically want to modernize it and to bring it onto the blockchain. So I think, up until now, I think each cryptocurrency that I've told you about is a little bit cyberpunk and has sort of like a libertarian flair to it. But I think that this one doesn't have like politics baked into it. It's just a use of the blockchain for a very traditional finance thing that's meant to introduce operational efficiencies into the interbank transfer system, which is it's potentially going to save a lot of money to a lot of people. Let's see. This one, Basic Attention Token, is one that I'm really excited about. It was founded by Brandon Eich, I think is his name. He's the guy who invented JavaScript, which is it's a part of every web browser you use today. It's the reason why, well, I don't know, just JavaScript is an important technology, and this guy's a legit guy. And basically, what he's done is launched this cryptocurrency called Basic Attention Token that monetizes your attention online. And the whole thesis of this project is that the advertising networks that have been built into the internet as we know it are fundamentally broken because they spy on you, and they take your personal data and they sell you advertisements based upon it. And they also sell your personal information can be resold across the internet. And they aim to solve this with this cryptocurrency called Basic Attention Token, where basically by default in the browser that they've released called Brave, all of the advertisements that you look at in your browser are by default blocked. So ad blocker just default out of the gate. And then you can opt in to giving out your personal information to these ad networks. And then in exchange for opting in with your personal data, you'll receive Basic Attention Token as you browse the web. And so it gives the consumer more control of their data. And I should mention that Basic Attention Token can be exchanged for Bitcoin or for US dollars, and you can sort of get paid for your attention as you browse the web. So that's pretty much all I have prepared for us tonight. I will say that I'm the founder of a project called Gitcoin, which starts with a G and not a B. I will know that Gitcoin has made it when Google stops autocorrecting it to Bitcoin. But I just think it's amazing that a guy like me can live in a place where quality of life is a focus like Boulder, Colorado, and community is a focus like Boulder, Colorado. And myself and other community organizers in the blockchain space are trying to make Colorado an A-list place for entrepreneurs to come and build next generation of web companies, and I just love it here, and I think it's a great place to build a company and to build a life and to have a family, and so I'm very excited for the future of technology in Colorado, and thank you very much for having me. So before, I think we have like 10 minutes for questions. How are we doing on time? 10 minutes. So does anyone have questions for me? Do we have a mic going around, or should I just pick people, or what?
Thanks, Kevin. That's really interesting. So I want to ask a question, flipping that from banking and money to voting. Can you talk about the potentials for voting using Bitcoin and why that would be valuable?
Yeah, thank you. So the question was, what is the potential for Bitcoin and blockchain with respect to voting? One of the things that people are really excited about with blockchain, and I didn't get into this in my presentation, is that it's very tamper-proof. So basically, all of the blocks that have been minted in the Bitcoin blockchain or any blockchain, no one can tamper with them because there's this cryptography that's very complex that's built into them. And so what people are really excited about with respect to voting is that if you have an election and you're recording the votes on the blockchain as they come in, as voters vote, then they get stored in Bitcoin blocks, and you basically have a chain of custody for the votes on the blockchain, all the way from the voters' hands to the officials who are counting the votes and deciding on who the victors of the election is. And that cryptographic, mathematically provable chain of custody is really important because it's important that we have faith in our election systems and that we can trust the winner, the voting records weren't tampered with, and to have mathematical proof that it wasn't tampered with would be huge. Good question. Go ahead.
How does Bitcoin compare in numbers with the other options, with the other coins?
So the question was, how does Bitcoin compare in numbers to other coins? And so basically, a lot of these cryptocurrencies will have between 100,000 units of their cryptocurrency to sometimes several billion units of cryptocurrency. Bitcoin, I think, has 21 million units of Bitcoin, and each of them is worth $7,000. I think that the way guys like me will rate the cryptocurrencies in terms of investment isn't how much each individual unit is worth, it's how much the market cap of the entire cryptocurrency is. So, for example, Bitcoin is 21 million times 7,000 per unit. Ripple, which is another cryptocurrency that I mentioned, is I think it has somewhere around 100 billion of them, but each one is only worth 70 cents. And so one of the mistakes that a lot of newbie investors will make in the ecosystem is they say, well, Ripple could overtake Bitcoin. It's only 70 cents and Bitcoin's $7,000. But that's the wrong way to look at it, because there's actually 1,000x more outstanding Ripple than there are Bitcoin. So you want to be important when you're evaluating. It's important when you evaluate a cryptocurrency to look at the market cap and not the number of units that are outstanding or the price of any of the units outstanding. And the other thing you want to look at is the inflation rate of the monetary supply. So Bitcoin is designed to be deflationary over time. There will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin, and there are other cryptocurrencies that are designed to be inflationary over time, and you'll get 4% more of them per year forever. And so just, those are different ways that you can think about cryptocurrency. Good question. Next question.
I've reframed this question about 10 times since you just answered the last one. But,
okay.
Let me try it. I'm going to ask you to speculate. How do you see this playing out? When with John and I owe John $5, when might I be used cryptocurrency or blockchain technology for that or other transactions? If you just, frame it looking ahead, when will banks have to substantially change their business? What are the other areas of business that are likely to? So it's wide open, but how does it move to common everyday use?
Oh boy, that is a hard question. Are we out of time yet? I'm just kidding. So, my first slide, I talked about these entrepreneurs in 1993 speculating about what the internet would become. And I just think, boy, they would have had to be really lucid to predict Facebook and to predict, like a Twitter candidate for US president. And so I will start off by saying that you asked me to speculate, so I'll just wildly speculate. I think that, so there's an analogy that I like to use that the internet put 1,000 songs in your pocket. Like I have an iPod right here, basically, that has 1,000 songs in your pocket. And one of the things that people in blockchain are sort of hypothesizing about right now is that the internet will put a bank in your pocket. So what happens if there's a bank in your pocket? Basically, credit becomes a little bit more peer-to-peer than it currently is, as opposed to top-down. And so one of the things that I'm really excited about in this new world, if it comes to fruition, is that when I want to buy a house in Boulder down the line, like I can do a crowd fund between my friends and family instead of going to my bank for a mortgage. And so, that's pretty radical. And I think that in order for us to get from here to there, there's just a lot of usability challenges right now. There's a lot of trust challenges. A lot of people think Bitcoin is just used for buying drugs on the internet right now. And so there's a real brand problem. And I think that those are real challenges to get there. But I think another challenge is volatility. Bitcoin, probably while I've had this presentation, has gone up or down 1 or 2%, and you just can't have that feature in your money. So people are really excited about stable coins right now, which will basically be a stable coin will always be $1, will just be like pegged to the US dollar, and people are excited about innovations like that that'll help bridge the gap to that peer-to-peer money. Good question, thank you.
Just to follow on that, when you did the crowdfunding for your home, which I think is great. So whatever's minted there, when you do that, I mean, does that mean that you will then be paying back all your friends and relatives? I mean, they keep track of how much you owe them and all that.
Yeah, so that was an example I just made up off the top of my head, so I haven't totally baked. I'll get the business plan to you. Yeah. So, I mean, maybe a better example that I have more baked is like Gitcoin is like the gig economy for software engineers, and you can hire someone for a half hour of their time or like a half a month of their time using Gitcoin. And so it's like a peer-to-peer hiring network. And maybe I should have led with that example because it's one that I actually have baked. But presumably, yes, it would keep track of who owes who what, and then there would be a smart contract that would like revoke ownership of your house if you didn't pay it or something like that. Yeah.
Kevin, I'm responding to you on behalf of our Rotary Club. I appreciate very much your talks. A couple of comments. One is I read just a couple of days ago that there are over 800 cryptocurrencies that have come and gone or are defunct. Mm-hmm. To your point on the banking system, one of the areas that I think makes a lot of sense is in the area of wire transfers, mm-hmm. particularly international wire transfers. Very difficult now to get money moved from one location to another. And I think the use of a blockchain-based formula could help. One of the things necessary with that are some standards. Right now, one of the things that happens with a wire transfer is both the recipient and the sender get run through an organization called the OFAC, which mm-hmm. is the Office of Foreign Assets Control, and they're looking for terrorists and money laundering. Mm-hmm. And in a blockchain scenario that's completely private, that's difficult then for the government to achieve some of their policy types of goals. Mm-hmm. With regard to alternative uses, the one you pointed out with regard to transactions in real estate makes mm-hmm. an awfully lot of sense in a title chain. If it's based on blockchain, you can track ownership from one party to another, and I think that could be a very good thing. For those of you that might be interested, for some summer reading, there's a book called Before Babylon, Beyond Bitcoin, From Money That We Understand to Money That Understands Us, by the author David Birch. And so, Kevin, in your honor, we are donating 100 doses of polio vaccine to the Polio Plus Fund, and I have a certificate to give you from President Michael Brady attesting to that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.